Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Let's Start with Planning. We will wait for a couple of minutes for people to join us. I hope you're well. Easing lockdown. Welcome to a damp, if not brightening southwest of England, which is good. I hope you can all hear me. Darren is with us in the background. So the team we've had our little holiday, passing around the pina coladas, and we're ready to rock with Let's Start with Planning. I hope you've been able to revisit the previous 4 Let's Start With, and this one concludes the current series, but we have a little program for you coming up which we'll talk about at the end. So I'll just give you a few moments just to make sure that we've got everybody in. Hope everybody can hear well. Here we've got some friendly faces who've been with us for a while. Good morning, Sylvia. Neil's out there, I see. You'll see more of Neil than other guys later on. Huh. So, if you're ready, we'll kick off with Let's Start with Planning. We've gone through drills, we've gone through conditioning, we've gone through intervals, we've gone through Oregons, quite a lot. Well, now we're going to talk about planning, because without planning, it won't work. What are you trying to achieve with planning? I put it in the terms of we would like the athlete to realize their potential. And as a coach, that's what you're there to help them do. But if you do not know what their restrictions are, or you haven't analysed what your restrictions are, it could be a very bumpy ride. So I would suggest that you start off with a discussion. How many of you sit down at any point in the year and discuss and assess and record what you and your athletes want? Oh, they turn up every Thursday or every Tuesday. That's not discussing what they want. Think about how much time you can both put into the discussion. How much time can the athlete put in as a runner, and how much time can you, the coach, put in to supporting that athlete? It's key to understand this and also to agree. You will both have, and the athlete will have, especially life aspirations, how I've called it, academic work, their life, their work. What are the aspirations of the athlete? Find out, talk to them. What do you want short term? By short term, I would be saying, what would you like over this coming season? Medium term, over the next couple of years. Long term, let's look at maybe a 4-year cycle. Start to ask them to think about these considerations. Don't forget the family commitments on both sides. Yeah, it's really important that you understand their commitments and they understand your commitments, so that we all start with a clean sheet. So sit down and discuss with your athletes. During that discussion and afterwards, there are some physical competencies that would be good to get out the way. Now, we've discussed all of these during the previous Let's Start With series, so you should be pretty aware of them, but find out their physical competency at the start point. Their squat, lunge, hinge, plank, jump and land patterns, how competent are they? Not to say that you can't improve them, not to say that you can't regress and get better, but you need a start point. So make sure that you have established the physical competency start point. Talk to and assess range of movement and current injuries. Where are they physically now at the start of your program? So start to maybe put in some screening, and we talked about screening in previous webinars. I put the last one in because it would be good to know if we're talking endurance, although endurance could cover everything from 4 hurdles through to ultras, where physiology, where are we in running economy? And I've just used 5K there, but you can use other distances to assess endurance status, be it I've got lots of endurance, I can run forever, but I'm one paced, or actually my endurance pyramid is pretty narrow at the bottom. At the end of this conversation, where you can then set long, short, medium-term goals. I think it'd be good now to go over how you would set the goals. There's a fairly simplistic diagram that we use, and I'm sure you've seen during some other coach education programs where we use a SMARTer goal. Okay, it's setting a goal which sets your pathway. It helps you set the plan. So make the goal specific. Make it as precise and as detailed as possible. Remembering we're talking about long, short, medium-term goals, so you might have to have 3 maps. Make it measurable, so you can quantify where you are. Yeah, so measurable, specific, and it's not the coach setting it or the athlete setting it. It's together. It's a team approach, and therefore the goals need to be shared, negotiated, and accepted by both parties and any other parties that are involved. Okay, so the goals should therefore be realistic. We would all like to be able to run a 3-hour marathon. Is that realistic? We might want to be able to run under 2 minutes for 800 meters. Is it realistic? So the goal should be realistic but challenging. We want the goal to be time phased. So when are we going to achieve this by? Which is where we come back to the long-term medium goals. Okay, and these goals are set in pencil, because what happens when the athlete achieves the goal and you therefore have to rewrite it? Hopefully you will, lots of times. The goal should motivate the athlete. It should be exciting. The last one I think is key. The athlete and yourself need to both record it, because once you write something down, be it electronically or an old-fashioned way like myself on a piece of paper, you own it. And to take ownership of your goal is key, because it no longer becomes, oh, it would be nice if I did. I've written this down. I am now going to think and do this. I hope you're okay there. And if anybody wants to take screenshots while we're talking, please do so. But all of these slides, and there's not that many of them, will be available for you on Athletics Hub in about a week or so you can go back and see them. So we've got our goals together. We're going to then look at our training. Now, remember that we've gone over some of this, and I do understand that this is set for, and I have set this for new and developing coaches. So some of the words may be a little bit not ones that you would normally use, but they're there. The threshold, yeah, it could be your 10K pace. There's a good threshold pace. Intervals, hill sprints, long steady runs, fartleks, that's runs with efforts in the middle of them. Goal pace interval, i.e. I want to run 3 hours at marathon pace. We'll throw in some 3-hour marathon pace intervals. Oregons we discussed at the last time. Hope you remember what those were. Some gym work. I put circuits in, and now you do understand that I don't really like circuits, but actually some physical preparation. But they can be, if they're worked properly, in amongst circuits. Please consider it's an individual approach. It's designed for your athlete or athletes. It should be athlete-centered, not coach-centered. Take your time, hurry slowly. Beware of session overload. Don't throw the kitchen sink at it too early. Okay, you're going to have a problem. Remember, it's competency based, not time managed. Beware of injuries that maybe you're starting with even or getting over, or injuries that occur during, or illnesses we should have put there as well, that occur during the program. So therefore you will have to make compensations for this as you go. There must be a total honesty and trust between the athlete and the coach, and the ability to talk. I help a gentleman in Bristol, which is about 90 miles from me, and we talk each week and we adjust weekly. There must be that honesty and trust and communication. The last one is the coach and the athlete need to understand what happens to your body when you train, because sometimes that will help you understand, oh, I didn't feel so good the day after that training session. It was really hard. Was it too hard? Probably not. And I hope that the next slide will help you understand that. The overall slide, I've only given you one graph. The only overall slide name is super compensation. Basically, with the program, don't throw the kitchen sink at it. It's a big mistake. It'll be too much. All you need to understand is from the left-hand side is before you start training, you are at a base level. When you train, the body will go, actually, it goes down. Your improvement will decline. As you recover, it will come up the other side to where the base level where you started from is. And after that time, you will get better. So that's where the compensation, super compensation comes. Now, the trick is to allow the body to recover, to get to the compensation stage where you get better, and to hit the next session before you go back down into regress. And it's about 48 hours roughly, dependent on the person, between each section. So if you do a hard session on a Tuesday, you reckon that by Thursday you should be ready for another interval or harder session. Doesn't mean to say you can't do something on the Wednesday, but you don't want to do it too hard. I hope that helps. And as I said before, don't throw the kitchen sink at it. Take a screenshot if you like, but that's the very basics of compensation, how your body reacts to training. There are phases in training that you ought to be aware of and where you would base your programs around. I've kept it fairly simple, I hope. So in the general training phase, on the far left, it's where you talk about your base preparation, if you like, the bottom of the pyramid, having a big broad base. So what would you throw in there? Making sure you have got a good aerobic base. ABC, remember, agility, balance, coordination, and your conditioning. That's what you would concentrate on in the general phase. It doesn't mean to say you wouldn't do other things, but there is where I would suggest that you start to put the emphasis on in the general preparation stage. And please don't think of the 12-month calendar with this. This is based around your competition, when we have them, phases, so that you build this from, it could be it starts in September, it could be it starts in January, it doesn't matter, but that's the phase. Pacific, next column in, is when we start to prepare for the event. Okay, so where would we put in here? We would start to talk about and start to factor in some aerobic support, some threshold, some anaerobic, maybe very, very tiny little bit of anaerobic work, some drills, some conditioning. If we've got a steeplechaser on our hands, we'll pull out the barriers and the hurdles just to say, come on, this is what it's all about. Then those two areas in time are quite long. I make them quite long. General, I make very long. Pacific, I make quite long as well. And pre-competition, competition and transition, or pre-competition and competition tend to be quite small. So pre-competition, it simulates the competition in training and in sessions. So we're going to use some, dependent on the race that we're headed towards or the goal we're heading towards, we would start to work on our anaerobic systems and stimulus there. More threshold, more aerobic. See, we keep bringing in the aerobic to underpin the pyramid at the base. with more drills and more conditioning. Competition phase, if you are on a track or headed towards a marathon or whatever, it tends to be quite short. So what are you trying to do there? We're going to support the athlete. Now that's really where the coach comes in, and this is psychological support. What do you need, athlete? Where should we go? How are we going to get there? And from the training perspective, you are in maintenance mode. They say we're not throwing the kitchen sink at you now, but we are keeping things ticking over. We are using maintenance. Transition. A lot of people don't do this. I think it's key. After the competition phase, you need to wind down. You can't just stop. So start thinking about winding down. And during this period, and this could be 2 or 3 weeks, you can analyze what happened, make a few observations, get back to really enjoying what you are there to do. I'm very lucky down here in the Southwest, as I keep going on about. So from our transition period, I take my athletes down to the beach and we run on the beach and we go for a swim and we do some drills. It's enjoying. And we start to think about planning for the next type of period that we're going into. So we'll be rolling from transition, maybe after a break, voluntary or not, back into general preparation. So it's a sphere, a circle. I hope that comes across okay for you. So now you've got the phases, what are you going to put into your schedule? And most of these are able to go across all of the endurance networks. Where are the key races? Are you going to have time trials? I mean, I know that at a marathon point of view, you might have 4 or 5 weeks out a 20-mile time trial or a 20-mile race. Those types of things need to be factored in. You want to factor in your regular review and performance, both physical and performance reviews, your screening, if you like. And remember, we talked about with interval work that every 6 weeks or so we can revisit and see where we are. Make sure that we factored in variety. We don't want the athlete to go stale. You need to be able to hit the drills, hit the intervals in different ways to achieve the same thing, which keeps the athlete motivated and excited. Factor in holidays. I'm going on holiday with my family. That's great. We'll factor it into the program and we'll know what to do when you're on holiday. So we just keep you ticking over. Maybe just a little bit of gym and beach work, but factor it in. So on the right hand side of the screen, we're going to talk about building in some recovery. We've talked about supercompensation. We need recovery. We need to make sure that we've got conditioning. We need to go through multiple paces. If I'm a marathon runner, I don't just need to run at marathon pace. If I'm an 800-meter runner, I need to tickle my 400 pace, my 800 pace, my 1500 pace, my kilometer pace, multiple paces. Build in technical competency that is assessed. Increased running economy is key. It's what we're looking for. We're building that in. You need to be able to assess that. That may be over a time trial of, say, for example, 5 or 10 kilometers, or this could be with using a physiological test, and we could talk about that maybe at another time. Make sure that you factored in and built in physical preparation. And that might be part of drills, but it is there. So physical preparation and drills, that's what we're going to build in. I hope that we're all on board with that. So we know what we put into the schedule. I'm going to show you 3 session examples, if I could say it. And these are live session examples that I have written and use with have used with current athletes. I've got an 800 program here, a marathon program, and a local group in lockdown program. And it is a snapshot of the program, not the full 9 yards, as you can understand. So here is a pre-competition 800-meter gentleman who is looking to run sub 150. You can see along the top, I've just put the days of the week. This actually is a teacher, so we had to discuss how was the best way to fit this in. We have the easy session on the Monday, which includes gym. Kane, who is the gentleman that I'm coaching here, is very competent in the gym, so I don't really have to give him sessions within that area, but we talk about it. On Tuesday is our longer intervals, and those are normally grass or trail based. Wednesday, there you have the recovery phase. So we've got steady work. You can see that there is a time trial in there. I've put it in red because it's actually, it's to be discussed. But at this stage, and this is pre-competition phase, remember, we want to assess where he is. Thursday, track, which is a faster interval, more event specific, you can see going on there. And remember, this is for a guy going for 150, so ignore some of the time indicators there. That's not for your average 14-year-old. Friday is rest day, but we're also encouraging Kane to roll and rest and use his self-myofascial release. Tempo work on a Saturday, and the longer run on the Sunday. And for Kane, a 45 to 50-minute run for a 800-meter runner is a long way. Okay, so there is a pre-competition 800-meter program that I've written and I'm using. I'm sure you can come up with your own. Here's a marathon program, a snapshot of one, and this is for an athlete that I coach in Plymouth, a doctor actually, Alison, and Alison achieved 2:52 in London off of this program. What you can see is on week 3 is the recovery week. Because if you compare what I'm asking her to do on week commencing the 21st of March, it's an awful lot different from what we're asking her to do on the 7th of March. So it is a lot of steady work to allow her body to recover. We got up to around about 80 miles a week, maybe a little more at the very end of the program. But this again, if this was discussed, Alison is a GP, we have to discuss what she can fit in, when she can fit it in. I was very lucky with Alison that she was incredibly diligent at following her program. We talked about maybe having a target race for a few weeks out, 4 or 5 weeks out. You can see on 7th of March, heading towards London, we've got at the end there the Spitfire, which is what we did, 20-miler, and the target was 2:08, and she achieved it, nailed it. Okay, so there is an idea of marathon programming from me, but you can see the difference, but you can also see the similarity with the allowance of recovery. Finally, excuse me, we have my local volunteer group, or where I locally volunteer in lockdown or easing of lockdown, and this is what I send them on a weekly basis. So Monday I set them some at-home physical preparation, and you can see what they've been asked to do, and we have been doing all of these exercises, so I know they can do them. On a Tuesday, and you will see that I divided it up to the 3K plus chaps and the 800 chaps, and chapesses, I should say. It is for girls and boys. We've got a pretty good mix in there. So it's not a generic program thrown at everybody. And I've even given them a choice of what they could do, knowing full well that the training will have the same effect. On Wednesday is our cross training. I'm encouraging them to use hydrotherapy, i.e. go and stand in the sea for 8 minutes. It make you feel better. If you don't live near the sea, sit in a cold bath or sit in a stream. It helps. It really does help. Thursday is our allocated time at our local track, and we only can be allocated 1 day session a week, so that's when we go. And what I do is saying, if you can make it, this is the session we will be doing, and if you can't make it, you can do this session at home. On a Friday is a rest day. You can cycle and swim or cross train, but if you'd rather just rest, then you rest. Saturday is the threshold, and Sunday is the longer run. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Again, you can take a screenshot, or it will come up again. If you want to ask some questions, you're more than welcome. Here's a bit of a thought process, coaches. You can't do it all. Excuse me. You can't do it all yourself. You need to stretch. Your athlete needs to stretch to concentrate on mobility, self-myofascial release, and other soft tissue techniques, maybe involving a soft tissue therapist here. You, the coach, should be using your assistants and leaders to help you. It's too much to do it on your own. And then you start to think about the other key people, the physiotherapist, the osteopath, the chiropractor, the nutritionist, the physiologist that you might need to get involved in your network. I plug the Southwest Endurance Network naturally, because that's where I am, and on there all of these practitioners are available, and you are very welcome to request membership to the Southwest Endurance Network and pose questions to these guys, or throw me a question and I will put you in contact with somebody. I'm not sure it'll be how close it will be to you, but you can certainly ask them the question. So don't think you can do it all. You can't. It's impossible. Now, a bit of reading and reference for you then. If you want to have a look at what we have discussed and reread the screens, that's excellent. A bit of bedtime reading for you. Better Training for Distance Runners. It's written by Physiology, so it's a bit of a lump, but it's a good book. High Performance Long Distance Training by Dave Sunderland, which is good, and The Art of Running Faster by Julian Gota. All good reference books. If you want to read a little bit of autobiography of how people have done this, Joe Pavey's This Mum Runs is a good book, and Sonia O'Sullivan's Sonia, My Story is another great book. We did say that while we were lounging on our by the pool, Darren and I were talking about what we were going to do. Well, we are going to visit physical preparation. We have 4 webinars for you starting on the 1st of August, which will go through physical preparation in more detail than we have in the past. But what we would suggest you do, it's not compulsory, but some pre-reading, is to go back and revisit Movement Skills 1 and 2, both of which are available online on Athletics Hub, and go back through the Let's Start With webinars. This will give you the grounding to be able to go into the physical preparation webinars and presentations, which will take a similar format to these, half a dozen slides, some videos, then some questions, and we hope that that will work for you. So if you are happy, I'm happy to take some questions. Martin, good morning to you. In an ideal world for a coach, you get years to develop athletes, but how do you deal with runners that come to you at Christmas purely for looking to be coached for a spring marathon? With regards to wow. If you get an athlete coming to you for Christmas and they're going, let's say London, which is the back end of April, you do have time, providing that they are in a physical condition to be able to accept the program. I would still have a general preparation phase within that program. I haven't worked out the number of weeks, so we're talking about January, February, March, April, so we're talking 16 weeks. So we could have a 4-week building program before we start to move into more Pacific marathon work. And during that 4 weeks, you should be able to assess where they could be and also agree what time is the goal time for the spring marathon. I hope that that answers that question for you, Martin. How much aerobic and anaerobic can we increase every year for an elite runner? Depends on the event. Anaerobic, because if you look at an 800-meter run, for example, you would say that that has an anaerobic aerobic contact of 60-40 roughly. 1500 would be around about up to 5k, could be about 50-50, and then it starts to go back the other way. I think it has to be increased purely on the capability of the athlete. And how would you measure that? A physiological test done by a guaranteed and trusted practitioner. Siobhan, following up on Martin's excellent question, thanks. Do you have an absolute minimum period of weeks that you insist on in terms of taking an athlete? Oh, I see. Sorry, I was floundering a little bit there. I tend to be coaching in for the long run, if you want to put it that way. So I would say that I would definitely. So let me just reread a little bit of your question. You've experienced slightly injured people asking for help about 10 to 12 weeks out of a marathon. Well, 12 weeks would be minimum. It depends on their physical condition. I think it's too short, is basically what you're saying. My view is, if you really want to target a half or a full marathon, let's have 6 months. Those are just my views. As I said to the previous question, we can do it in 16 weeks, but a lot of that depends on the physical condition of the athlete. Do you think 1 day between sessions is too little? If you go back to the supercompensation, I think that for mature runners, that 48 hours between hard sessions, in inverted commas, is key. Therefore, if you work hard on a Tuesday, you can work hard again on a Thursday. What you do on the Wednesday, be it cross training or light sessions or easy sessions, is fine. So 1 day between sessions is not too little. It depends on the session. Philip, off topic, but topical. What are your views on training loads being COVID secure? Training, well, if you look at my program, you can see that training loads, training on roads, excuse me, I must go to Specsavers. I am not in a road running community, but I would say that providing you have the correct number of athletes and that you are maybe using, and you would certainly be using social distancing, but being outside, I think that you could work COVID secure quite well. Matt, any advice on how we set goals within a group who differ both physically and competency in a group of, well, under 11s to under 13s, that could be a bit of a challenge, Matt. However, why would you not have an evening, or at the beginning of an evening or at the end of an evening, where you sit down with various members of the group and discuss goals? And you might have people who are of similar ability and move them into little groups of similar ability and discuss what their goals might be. It might be, for example, at the top end to gain a county medal. Well, what might we have to do to make this county medal? But as you say, they differ physically, so you have to treat them all as individuals. Every athlete is an individual of one. So you can do it, but it requires a lot of work. Are these sessions double? I mean, what happens if your athlete only has just 2 hours a day for training? Well, if your athlete has 2 hours a day for training, Sylvia, make sure that the 2 hours you've got use exactly what you want them to use. There is no time wasted. My athletes only have me when I see them for a few hours for training, but why can't you ask them, if you are looking for volume, or if you're asking for something else, you set them something to do in the morning. Therefore, you could have got your early morning run in, and you come for your interval training in the evening. Therefore, you have just hit a double day. Any tips how we can get more club coaches and leaders? We have no trouble getting athletes. Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? I think if you have a very welcoming group of people who are running club, and if Neil Williams is out there, I know what he is doing exactly this, that you will encourage some of your athletes to become coaches and leaders. If you are running in a different scenario, you might start to use a little I'm trying to think of the word, a little newsletter to parents and helpers saying, would you like to come along and help for a couple of weeks and see how that goes? Or you might have athletes that are nearing the end of their career and they would make really good coaches and leaders. So I would ask the retiring athletes, the parent helpers, and then start to look at the people there, because leaders can be runners too. So talk about someone, say, right, this week Jim's going to be a leader and next week Jane can be a leader. And as long as there is structure, Trevor, and someone is overseeing it, it can work. What is the advantage to train in water? Well, there's lots of difference of training in water. My guys will go and stand in water, moving water, to aid recovery. You add resistance to runs by training in water, and you can actually really help someone who is suffering from stress fractures to start to use aqua jogging, which means that you can train in water without putting too much pressure on the bones. Now, if you then take that to swimming, swimming is a non-weight loading sport. So why not, for someone who is an athlete who spends all their time on their feet, to have a day in the water? Great recovery work, non-weight loading. I hope that helps. What is the optimum mileage for a young middle distance or long distance runners, Roslyn? Haven't got a clue, Roslyn. Depends very much on that. That's a dreadful answer, Mark. It depends very much on the individual. I don't tend to go for mileage for young people. I tend to put things by time. So if we go for our long run, the long run might be for 35 minutes. It could be for 45 minutes. It could be for 50 minutes, dependent on the young person. If you start putting mileage out there, the next question that comes back is how fast? So rather than give them mileage, I give them time and say, if you run at a conversational pace, let's take your long steady run, which should be at low heart rate. If you can run with your friend for 35 to 40 minutes and hold a conversation, we've got that about right. If when we're doing our interval session at the other end of the scenario and you can still hold a conversation, we're not running it hard enough. So I hope that helps. As I said, I veer away from mileage with young people. I go by time. With a group of fairly fit 12-year-olds, what is the maximum distance you recommend training at for an endurance group? We sort of revert to the last one. Fairly fit 12-year-olds, that's great, and they're probably a lot fitter than you and I, but I would then still keep them in that comfort zone. I don't want them to be out of the comfort zone, because in your group of, and we'll use your expression, fairly fit, there will be lots of different abilities in fairly fit. So you would look at that, and I would go back to the time element and start it. And you can start it when you can see them, maybe find a nice loop and a circuit and say, okay, we're all going to start at a nice steady run where we can all talk for 20 minutes. And once you've got that as a benchmark, you can then start to progress some, regress others, and see how it works. Graham, that's how I would work it. Super compensation, Christopher, please elaborate, as this is very key to your so very right about the training. But at the moment, I will take it as far as this is that people make a big mistake when they start to put training plans together by putting too much in, not allowing enough recovery. Therefore, the athlete does not recover. Therefore, their ability to train goes down and they lose their mojo, so to speak. I would say that with this, as we spoke before, is that you should have 48 hours at least between your harder sessions, and remembering that although our week is 7 days, why could you not be working on a 10-day cycle? And look very carefully about what you're asking your athlete to do. So if you said, right, my athlete can take 3 key sessions a week, so therefore the standard phrase would be Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I hope that helps a bit, Christopher, but if you would like to have a more in-depth conversation on that, I'd be happy to do so via the SWEN website. What is your view on the relative merit of different recovery indicators to assess the extent at which the athlete is recovered? For example, resting heart rate, sleep quantity. Wow, I feel about my scheduled sessions today, especially which. Well, there are lots of you put in lots of indicators there. Resting heart rate when you wake up, for example, is a really good way of telling how well you are. If when you wake up you take your heart rate and it's higher than your standard resting heart rate, you know that perhaps today I am not in the best of places. I would go for sleep quality over quantity. Some people need less sleep than others. I need lots. So 6 hours, a good 6 hours for me is good. And again, you can do this in a form of a spreadsheet and ask your athlete to start filling it out, which will give you an indicator of how they are. Weight is a prickly topic that you need to look at very carefully because disordered eating may be an issue, but I would say that from a visual point of view, you will be able to tell for an athlete who has a problem, but also with very young athletes, as they grow, they'll get heavier. So I would look at that, and also, as you say, the questioning and the talking about how did you feel that session went is a pretty good way of looking at it, remembering that sometimes it was just a bad day and you might have to, in a couple of weeks' time, revisit that session. Can an athlete benefit from 2 consecutive days hard sessions? Depends on the athlete, darling, and the reason for giving it to them. I would say probably not unless they were of somewhat of an elite standard. And if I gave them 2 consecutive hard sessions, I would look to give them double the recovery afterwards. Would you advise doing tempo runs on a hilly? Would you advise doing tempo runs on a hilly route? You can. I would normally expect athletes to do tempo workouts on a more flatter route, terrain, because you can actually sort out the pace better. Remember that my version of tempo and yours might be subtly different. From a tempo run, I would say your ability to run hard for an hour is your tempo pace. Now that might be for a club runner their 10k pace, but that's what tempo is. Once you establish that, if you're able to maintain that pace on a hilly terrain, great, but most people won't. So I would say probably not, would be my take on it. In UK, start to use elevation in training what? I'm sorry, I'm not sure about the question. Could you rewrite it for me? In the UK, start to use elevation in training. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with that question, Darren. If you're talking about when would you increase training loads, that will be as the athlete gains the competency to move on to the next block of training. I haven't run myself during lockdown, and lots of my athletes haven't. What is the most important thing for them to start with? That's a cracking question, and I'm sure there's a lot of people doing the same thing. I would go back to our little chart and say general preparation. So steady, long endurance runs that are enjoyable. So they're chat runs. We talk, we run, we talk about it, and we start to factor in some physical preparation, some real basic stuff, some drills and some squats, bridges, planks, that type of thing, and just build in slowly. Remember the old word we've used before, hurry slowly, and that's where I'd come from. Are we getting there with the questions, Darren? Have we got a few more? Age is used as a measurement tool on some apps. What are your thoughts? I don't like age. I like to think of long-term athlete development, which is very different to biological age. And I hope that I'm reading this right now. Wattage, okay, similar to cycles. Okay, sorry, God. I would say that actually, as a measure of energy and output, it's not too bad, but I would go back to the less technological, especially with younger runners and club runners, to be going to how they're feeling. Certainly use heart rate. You could use energy output for watts. Yeah, it works. It very much depends if your athlete and your coach are happy and comfortable using it. Sorry about the confusion there, Darren. Yeah, we can take a few more questions. Don't forget that before we finish, that we point you towards the physical prep webinars, and that we will take questions from you on other formats. What flexibility would yoga and for flexibility, yes, definitely. Yoga and Pilates are a great help. Your challenge will be, where do you fit it into the program? And we talked about planning. So yeah, if you've got a yoga class or Pilates class on a Monday, go to the yoga and Pilates class. Don't forget all the other ingredients in the cake, but yes, they definitely help. Darren has just put up on the screen there that we would like you to do a little bit of pre-course work before we go to our physical prep. So there's the movement skills 1 and 2. Have a look at those. They'll definitely help you. And we do have a few minutes. If anybody wanted to ask a question that they don't think was answered in the detail they want, please ask the longer questions to the Southwest. Oh, hello, Trevor. How far in advance do you set your weekly programs? How far in advance? I set my weekly programs, he says, thinking out loud, 6 weeks. I use a 6-week cycle, which actually I can adjust, Trevor, at any one time, but I use a 6-week cycle and then I review before handing out the next 6-week cycle. I've signed on for Movement Skills Workshop. Do I need to do parts 2 and 3 before the next session? There's on the movement skill, there is movement skill 1 and movement skill 2. You don't need to, but it would certainly help you. How are we doing, Darren? We are there. If movement skill 2 is not available online yet, then don't worry about that. I thought it was, and that is my mistake. I'm sorry, but movement skill 1 definitely is. So if you think of movement skill 1 as single response, movement patterns, and movement skill 2 is multiple response movement patterns, you won't be far off it. So when we come to do the physical prep, you'll understand where I'm coming from. So by single response, I mean if you took a medicine ball or a squat pattern's probably easier. A single squat to the bottom line and up is one movement pattern. Multiple movement patterns in the squat process, which might include multiple squats, multiple jump squats, that type of thing, is multiple. Therefore, that's the main difference where you progress from movement skill 1 to movement skill 2. Well, thank you very much for the compliment, Rob. What's your single best advice for an inspiring coach? Got one. Never think you know it all. Always be willing to learn from different coaches and different sports. What can you take away from tennis or swimming or rugby or football or cricket that you could help with your would help your athletes? Never think that you've learned it all, because you haven't. There were some great questions. Thank you for my learned colleague in the background there. That's really good. Thank you again. I hope that we've managed to answer your questions. The questions are great. I do sometimes think, oh, I hope that that's come across okay. And I hope it has. We value your feedback, and we look forward to seeing you on the 1st of August for the first of a 4-part series of Let's Start with Physical Preparation. So be ready for that one. I've got various athletes and coaches doing videos for you as we speak. So there you go. It should be challenging for us and challenging for you. So we'll see you on the 1st of August. Take care, good people, and see you soon.